Lorraine Acaffer had been holding the phone for 4 minutes and 31 seconds when Steve Harvey stopped the game. She had not moved. She had not spoken. She was standing at the Fast Money podium with a phone screen lit up in both hands, reading a message that her father had typed 7 weeks before he died. A message he had written, saved as a draft, and never sent. She had found it by accident. She had been scrolling through his old phone, the one her mother had handed her in a grocery bag 3 months after the funeral, along with his wallet and his watch, and the small things a person leaves behind, looking for a photo she remembered him taking at her college graduation 2 years ago. She had found the photo. And then she had found the draft. It was addressed to her. It was dated 7 weeks before he passed. It was 214 words long. She had read it 17 times before she could read it without her hands shaking. She had read it 140 times since. She knew every word of it. She had not deleted it. She had not shown it to anyone. She had not been able to explain. When her mother asked why she carried her father's old phone everywhere, why it felt like the only thing she could do, why setting it down felt like losing him a second time, and why reading those 214 words on a Tuesday morning at the Family Feud podium, in front of a studio audience and a man in a suit who had stopped the game and gone completely still, felt like the closest she had been to her father since the morning they said goodbye. This is everything that happened before that moment, and everything that happened after. Family Feud tapes its Tuesday block in a studio in Atlanta that runs on the organized warmth of a production team that has learned to hold space for the full range of what human beings bring into a room when they have been told they are going to be on television. The Acaffer family arrived on a Tuesday in late June and went through the standard intake sequence with the practiced ease of people who had been briefed thoroughly and were prepared for the format, if not entirely for the feelings. There were 5 of them. Lorraine Acaffer, 27, in a green wrap dress that her mother had suggested, and that she had almost changed out of 3 times that morning before deciding it was fine. She was a 3rd-grade teacher in Decatur, Georgia, with the particular quality of calm that certain people develop when they spend every day managing 23 8-year-olds. A surface steadiness that coexisted, in Lorraine's case, with something much less steady underneath. Her mother, Blessing Acaffer, 58, who had come from Lagos at 23 with her husband Emmanuel, and had built a life in Atlanta over 35 years that she described, when asked, as everything she had hoped for and more complicated than she had imagined, which was the honest version. Blessing wore a yellow blouse and her good earrings, and moved through the studio with the composed dignity of a woman who had been through the hardest year of her life, and had decided that dignity was not something you set down because things were hard. Lorraine's aunt, Yetund, 53, Blessing's younger sister, who had flown in from Houston for this and treated the entire enterprise with the competitive seriousness it deserved. Yetund's son Dare, 29, who was the family's energy source and had already made friends with 2 production assistants, and learned the names of 3 camera operators before the warm-up started. And Lorraine's younger brother Khaled, 24, who was finishing an engineering degree at Georgia Tech and who had the quiet watchfulness of a younger sibling who has been paying close attention to his sister for years and is not going to stop now. Production assistant, a young man named Marcus, ran them through warm-up questions. Yetund was fast and ferociously competitive. Dare was loud and mostly right. Blessing answered with measured precision. Khaled was sharp. Lorraine answered every question correctly. She answered the way she always answered things lately, carefully, fully, with a half-second of consideration before each response that had not been there before this past year, before the thing that had put it there. She had her father's phone in her bag. She had carried it every day for 8 months. She had carried it to school every morning into the classroom and set it in the drawer of her desk where she kept the things that needed to be close but not visible. She had carried it to the studio today. She had not told her family it was in her bag. She was not sure she could explain why she had brought it. She was not sure she needed to explain it. Some things you carry because setting them down is not yet possible. You carry them until the day comes when you understand what you were carrying them toward. Emmanuel Acaffer had died on a Thursday morning in September, 11 months before the taping, of a cardiac event that his cardiologist would later describe as massive and unsurvivable. A phrase Lorraine had turned over in her mind many times since, unable to decide whether unsurvivable was more terrible for being accurate or for being so final in its precision. He was 59 years old. He had been healthy by all appearances. He had walked 3 miles every morning before work. He had made Lorraine's mother laugh every single day of their 36-year marriage, which was not a small thing, and which Lorraine understood more fully after his death than she had before it. Emmanuel Acaffer had been a civil engineer who had spent 28 years designing infrastructure for Fulton County, and who had cared about the work in the specific way of people who believe that the things they build outlast them, and that this matters. He had driven Lorraine to school every morning from kindergarten through 4th grade, when she had decided she was old enough to walk. He had coached her debate team in high school, badly, with enormous enthusiasm. He had flown to every parent-teacher conference for her first 2 years of teaching, which she had told him repeatedly was unnecessary and had never actually tried to stop. He had been the person she called first when anything happened. Not because her mother was unavailable or less loving. Her mother was present and fierce and devoted, but because Emmanuel had a specific quality of attention when his daughter spoke that she had not found replicated elsewhere in the world. He listened the way people listen when they are not waiting for their turn, when they are genuinely and completely interested in the person speaking, when being heard is the whole thing they are offering. She had not understood how rare that was until it was gone. The morning he died, Lorraine had been at school. She had been in the middle of a lesson about fractions, the kind where you use pizza slices as the example because 8-year-olds understand pizza with a clarity that transcends mathematics, when the front office had called her classroom phone and said she needed to come to the office, and something in the voice of the woman on the line had told her, before any information was given, that the ordinary sequence of the day was over. Her mother had been at the hospital. Emmanuel had been gone by the time Lorraine arrived. She had sat in a chair in a hospital hallway in Decatur, Georgia, and understood, in the specific and irreversible way that understanding sometimes arrives, that the person she would have called first to tell about this was the person it was about. The grief of the months that followed was the kind that does not resolve into a shape you can describe easily. It was not constant, and it was not predictable, and it arrived in places that made no structural sense. In the produce aisle of the grocery store because he had always bought too many mangoes, in the car at a red light on a Tuesday for no reason at all, in her classroom on a Thursday morning when a student raised his hand and said, with the full sincerity of an 8-year-old, "Miss Acaffer, my dad says you're the best teacher I've ever had." And she had thanked the child and turned to the board for 60 seconds because she needed 60 seconds. She had managed. Managing was the mode she had defaulted to. Functioning, present, apparently okay. Her mother worried about her. Khaled watched her carefully, yet uncalled every Sunday. Lorraine answered every call. She said she was fine. She was not fine. She was in the mode of someone who has not yet located the place where the grief can be put down, and so she was carrying it everywhere, which is exhausting in a way that does not show on the surface. 8 months after the funeral, her mother had handed her a grocery bag. "His things," Blessing had said. "I kept them in the drawer. I thought you should have them." Inside, his wallet. His watch, the one he had worn every day for 20 years with a small crack in the crystal from a fall he had never gotten around to repairing. A transit card, a dry cleaning receipt, a folded piece of paper with a phone number on it that she did not recognize and would never identify, and his phone. She had charged it. She had looked for the graduation photo. She had found the draft. It was addressed Lorraine. Just her name in the to field, as if he had started with that and then needed time for everything else. The message began, "I've been trying to write this for 3 weeks and I keep deleting it because it never sounds the way I mean it." She had stopped breathing briefly. She had read it through. The message was about her teaching, about watching her become the person who stood in front of a room of children and made them feel seen the way he had always tried to make her feel seen. About a parent-teacher conference he had attended 2 years ago where he had listened to her students' parents describe his daughter and had sat in the hallway outside the classroom afterward for 10 minutes because he could not get his face entirely under control. It was about the way she laughed. It was about a conversation they had had when she was 9 years old about whether bridges were alive, which she had asked because she had seen him working on a drawing and wondered what he was making, and he had said yes in the way that matters, that the people who built them put something of themselves into them and that thing stayed. She had apparently said, "So bridges are like letters." He had never forgotten that. He had written it down in the message. The message ended, "I don't know why I keep not sending this. I think I keep waiting to say it better, but I have been a father for 27 years and the thing I know is that there is no better way to say, you are the best thing I have ever had a hand in. Send." He had not sent it. He had saved it as a draft. He had died 6 weeks later. Lorraine had read the message 140 times. She had not shown it to anyone. She had carried the phone in her bag every day since. And she had, for reasons she could not fully articulate, brought it to the Family Feud studio on a Tuesday in late June. The Akaffer family was matched against the Torres family from Marietta. 5 people who played with the warm confidence of a family that had done things together for a long time and were comfortable in each other's company. The first round went to the Akafors. Yetund had been unstoppable, 3 consecutive correct answers on the question about things you find at a family reunion that produced the exact kind of delighted horror from Steve Harvey that Yetund had apparently been aiming for since she walked in. Steve had found her immediately. "You are dangerous," he told her. "Thank you," she said. "That wasn't a compliment." "I know," she said. "I took it as one." The audience loved her. Steve worked down the line. Dare, loud, quick, present. Blessing, composed, correct, warm. Khaled, quiet, precise, watching. Steve stopped at Lorraine. He looked at her for a moment. There was something about her that he had been watching since the introductions, not a sadness exactly, but a quality of containment, as if she were managing a very full glass and had learned to walk carefully. "Tell me about yourself," he said. "I'm a 3rd-grade teacher," she said. Decatur. 3rd grade, you like it? "They're honest," she said. 8-year-olds. "They don't know how to be anything other than what they are. I find it useful." Steve Harvey tilted his head. "Useful how?" she considered. "It reminds me what things are supposed to feel like before people learn to cover them up," she said. The answer was too real for a warm-up question. Steve Harvey heard it. "You having a hard time covering something up?" he asked, not unkindly, just directly. Lorraine looked at him. "My dad passed away," she said. 11 months ago. She paused. "I'm still figuring out how to carry it." The room went quiet, not the performed quiet of a television moment, the actual quiet that descends when someone says a true thing in a public space. "I'm sorry," Steve Harvey said. "Thank you. Were you close?" "He was my first call," she said. "For everything, he was always my first call." Steve Harvey was still for a moment. "What do you do now?" he asked. "When you want to call him?" Lorraine's hands moved slightly, a small, almost invisible movement toward her bag and then back. "I'm working on it," she said. Steve Harvey watched the movement. He filed it. "All right," he said. "We're going to play some feud today, and we're going to play it for your dad." "Yes, sir," she said. "What was his name?" "Emmanuel." Steve Harvey nodded once. "For Emmanuel," he said to the room. The audience applauded. The game resumed, but the room had shifted temperature. And Khaled, standing beside his sister at the podium, had reached over and briefly touched her hand. She had held on for exactly 3 seconds, then let go, then played. The second round was close. The Torres family had found their rhythm, their oldest. A woman named Patricia, 46, had been quiet in the first round and devastating in the second, going on a 5-question run that put them up by 38 points before Dare pulled 2 back. The Akaforce needed the final question to win the round. Steve Harvey read it. "Name something a parent says to a child that the child doesn't understand until they're grown." Both families paused. The question had a specific gravity. Lorraine buzzed in. "I'm proud of you," survey said, 41 points, top answer. The Akaforce won the round. The audience applauded. Steve Harvey did not move immediately to reset. He looked at Lorraine. "I'm proud of you," he repeated. She looked at him. "Say that to you?" Steve asked. "Emmanuel." Lorraine's expression moved through something quickly, a flicker, contained, closed. "Yes," she said. "Did you believe him?" She blinked. It was not a question she had been asked before. Yes," she said. "I believed him." "Good," Steve said, just that. "Good." The third round was the tightest. Both families at full capacity, every question contested, the board flipping points back and forth with the momentum of a crowd that had decided to be fully present. The Akaforce won by 11 points. They were going to fast money. Dare went first. He was good, excited, fast, occasionally creative in ways that were not survey-approved but which produced sounds from the audience that were almost better than points. He scored 131 points. The family needed 69 more from Lorraine. The isolation panel came down. Lorraine stood at the fast money podium. Steve Harvey walked toward her. He stopped close. "You all right?" "Yes, sir." "You sure?" She looked at him. "I brought his phone," she said quietly. "My dad's. I have it in my bag. I don't know why I told you that." Steve Harvey went still. "You carry it with you, every day." "Why today?" She thought about it. "I think," she said carefully, "because he would have wanted to be here." Steve Harvey looked at her for a long moment. He did not say anything. He nodded once. 20 seconds, he said. "Play like he's watching." The clock started. Name something a teacher does that students remember years later. Listens. Name a reason someone might cry at a graduation. Pride. Name something people wish they had said before it was too late. Lorraine answered without pausing. "I love you." Name something a father leaves behind that lasts. His name. Name something you do when you miss someone. Read what they wrote. The buzzer. The audience was completely still, not because the answers were unusual. Because every answer had come from somewhere specific. Steve Harvey looked at the first card. Listens, survey says, the board, 34 points. Pride survey says 38 points. Running total 72. They already had enough. The audience began to stir. Steve held up one hand. I love you survey says the board 44 points. His name survey says 29 points. Running total 145. And read what they wrote survey says the board paused. Lorraine was very still. Read what they wrote 37 points. Total 182 points combined with Dare's 131, 313 points. The Ackaffer family had won. The audience erupted. Yeton screamed. Dare picked up Khaled. Blessing put both hands over her mouth. Lorraine stood at the podium. She had not moved. She was looking at Steve Harvey. Steve was looking at her. The answer was still on the board. Read what they wrote. Is there something you want to read? Steve asked. The celebration noise around them was real. The question was also real. Lorraine looked at her bag. She looked back at Steve. I don't know if I can, she said. Nobody's asking you to, Steve said. But if you wanted to, we have time. The room had quieted around them. The family had noticed. Even Yetund had gone still. Lorraine reached into her bag. She took out the phone. What nobody in that studio knew, not her family, not the production team, not Steve Harvey, was that Lorraine had almost not brought the phone today. She had carried it every day for 8 months without intention or plan. That morning had been different. She had been standing at the kitchen counter at 6:15 a.m., already dressed, bag packed, keys in hand, and she had looked at the phone on the counter where she had set it to charge the night before, her father's phone in its worn case, screen dark, and she had thought, I should leave it. She had thought, it doesn't belong at a game show. She had thought, Dad would think this was funny. That last thought had stopped her. She had stood at the counter and thought about what her father would have thought about Family Feud. He would have been enthusiastic. He would have practiced survey answers at the dinner table. He would have made a spreadsheet. She was certain about the spreadsheet. Emmanuel Ackaffer had made spreadsheets for everything, for their vacation budgets, for the structural data of the bridges he designed, for his daughter's debate tournament schedule, for the seeding order of his tomato garden, which occupied a 4x6 patch of soil beside the house on Willard Drive and which he had tracked in a spreadsheet since 2009. The spreadsheet was still on his laptop. His laptop was in the study. His chair was still in the study. Nobody had moved his chair. Lorraine had stood at the counter that morning thinking about the chair and the spreadsheet and the tomato garden that her mother had been tending alone this spring, learning the planting schedule from a notebook Emmanuel had kept, making sure his tomatoes came up. She had picked up the phone. She had put it in her bag. She had driven to Atlanta. And now she was holding it on the stage of Family Feud, and Steve Harvey was waiting, and her family was watching, and the room was holding something that it did not yet know the shape of. What she also did not know, what she had not been told, was what her brother had done 3 weeks before the taping. Khaled Ackaffer was 24 years old and finishing an engineering degree and had inherited from his father the precise and patient quality of someone who believes that problems can be solved if you think about them carefully enough. He had been thinking carefully about his sister for 8 months. He had watched her manage. He had watched her carry the phone. He had watched her be fine in the particular way that was not fine. 3 weeks before the taping, Khaled had gone to his mother. She needs to say it out loud, he had said. She has been carrying it alone and she needs to say it out loud in front of people and be allowed to feel it. She won't do it at home. She won't let us see it. She needs a room where it's allowed to be big. Blessing had listened to her son. What are you thinking? She had said. I'm thinking Family Feud, he said. Blessing had looked at him. That is either very smart or very strange, she said. Probably both, Khaled said. Dad would have liked it. Blessing had been quiet for a long moment. He would have made a spreadsheet, she said. I know, Khaled said. She had called Yeton that night. The application had gone in the next morning. Khaled had not told his sister any of this. He had simply shown up for everything, the application, the scheduling, the drive to Atlanta, the way his father had always shown up for things, quietly, completely, without requiring credit. He was watching his sister hold their father's phone on a game show stage. He was standing very still. He had not planned for this exact moment. He had simply believed, in the way his father had taught him to believe things, that the right moment would come if you created the conditions for it. The conditions were here. The moment was now. Lorraine looked at the phone in her hands. The screen was lit. She had opened it on the way to the podium, not intentionally or perhaps intentionally without admitting it to herself. And the draft was open, the way it was always open, the way she had never closed it in 8 months of carrying the phone. 214 words, 7 weeks before he died. Never sent. She looked at Steve Harvey. He wrote me a message, she said. Before he passed, he never sent it. He saved it as a draft. I found it after. Steve Harvey was completely still. 214 words, she said. I know every one of them. I've read it, she stopped. A lot of times. I've read it a lot of times. What does it say? Steve asked. Quietly, she looked at the screen. He said he'd been trying to write it for 3 weeks and kept deleting it. The room made no sound. He said he watched me become a teacher and he sat outside my classroom at a parent-teacher conference and he couldn't get his face under control. She almost smiled. That's exactly how he said it, couldn't get his face under control. A sound moved through the audience, soft, involuntary. He talked about a conversation we had when I was 9, she said. I asked him if bridges were alive. He told me yes, that the people who built them put something of themselves in and it stayed. And I said, so bridges are like letters. And she stopped. She looked at the screen. He never forgot that, she said. He wrote it down in the message. He wrote it down because he wanted me to know he never forgot it. Steve Harvey pressed both hands together in front of his mouth. Lorraine looked up at him. The last line, she said. He said, I don't know why I keep not sending this. I think I keep waiting to say it better. But I have been a father for 27 years, and the thing I know is that there is no better way to say, you are the best thing I have ever had a hand in. And then he wrote send, and he didn't send it. The room was the quietest it had been, not a game show quiet, a church quiet, a particular kind of stillness that a room of people produces when they have collectively arrived somewhere sacred. Steve Harvey did not speak. He stood at the edge of the stage. He was looking at the floor. 3 seconds. 4. The audience was watching him. He looked up. His composure was intact, but only barely, in the way that composure is intact when a person has decided to hold it and is spending significant effort on the decision. I need a moment, he said. He turned slightly away from the camera. He pressed 2 fingers to his eyes briefly. The audience did not make a sound. The production team did not move. Nobody redirected. Steve Harvey stood on the stage of his own show and took a moment. When he turned back, he looked at Lorraine. He said send and didn't send it, Steve said. Yes, sir. Because he was waiting to say it better. Yes, and he never, no. Steve Harvey was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Yes, sir. He did send it, Steve said. Lorraine looked at him. Maybe not the way he meant to, Steve said. Maybe not in the way where you get the notification and the message arrives and you read it in real time, but you found it. He kept it on his phone. He wrote send at the end of it. He meant it for you. He paused. It got to you, it just took a different route. Lorraine looked at the phone. He built bridges, Steve said, his whole career, and he told his daughter that bridges are like letters, that the person who built them puts something of themselves in and it stays. He looked at her. That message is a bridge, Lorraine. He built it for you, and it is still standing. The audience came apart, not applause, crying. Real, unmanaged, not for television crying, the kind that comes out of people when something has reached the place where defenses end. Lorraine held the phone against her chest. She closed her eyes. Her mother had moved from the family side of the stage. Blessing Akaffer walked to her daughter and put both arms around her and held on in the way of a mother who has been waiting for her child to put something down and has finally seen it begin to happen. Lorraine held on. Khaled had his hand over his mouth. He was nodding slowly, the way people nod when something they hoped would happen has happened and they have no other language for it. Steve Harvey stood at center stage. He was not performing. He was just a man standing in a room where something real had happened and staying present for it. When the room had settled, when Blessing had held her daughter long enough, and Lorraine had come back to something that was not okay, but was closer to okay than it had been, Steve Harvey walked to center stage. He had been quiet for a while. He was still quiet. He looked at the Akaffer family. He looked at the Torres family who had not left, who were standing on the other side of the stage with the respectful stillness of people who have understood that they are witnesses to something larger than the occasion that brought them here. He looked at the audience. I want to say something, he said, and I want to say it carefully because it matters. He was not in host mode. He was in the mode that he sometimes arrived at, rarely, but when a moment earned it, of a man speaking from a place underneath the format. This woman's father wrote her a message, he said. He wrote it over 3 weeks. He kept deleting it because it wasn't good enough. He wrote send at the end of it, and then he waited. He was going to send it when he had said it perfectly. He paused. He never sent it. He looked out at the audience. I want every person in this room and every person watching to hear this. Do not wait. Do not wait until it is perfect. Do not wait until you have found the right words, the right moment, the right version of what you are trying to say. Because the right moment is not coming. The right words are not coming. The only thing that is coming is time running out. He stopped. Her father was a good man. He built bridges for 28 years. He walked 3 miles every morning. He flew to his daughter's parent-teacher conferences. He looked at Lorraine. He watched you teach and he couldn't get his face under control. He stopped, looked at the floor briefly. I know exactly what that feels like. I know what it is to watch your child be exactly who they are supposed to be and have no words for how that hits you. He straightened. He said you are the best thing he has ever had a hand in. He meant it. He knew he meant it when he wrote it. He just kept waiting to say it better. He looked at Lorraine directly. There is no better, you know that now. You have read it 140 times and you know there is no better. That message is as good as it gets, because it is real, because it came from him, because he sat down and tried to put into words the thing a father feels about his daughter when the feeling is full and honest and complete. He turned back to the audience. There is someone in your life right now who needs to hear from you, not next week. Not when you have figured out how to say it, now, today, before the draft stays in the folder. He paused one final time. Emmanuel Achafer built bridges his whole career, Steve said, and his daughter told him when she was 9 years old that bridges are like letters. He never forgot that. He wrote it down. He looked at the phone in Lorraine's hands. That is the bridge, he said, right there, and it is still carrying. The audience applauded, the sustained, full kind. Lorraine held the phone. She was not crying anymore. She was doing something past crying, the thing that comes after when the grief has been witnessed and something in it has been released and what remains is not better, exactly, but lighter. Lighter in the way that things are lighter when they have been shared. Blessing had her arm around her daughter. Khaled had moved to his sister's other side. He did not say anything. He put his arm around her. She leaned into both of them. The three of them stood on a game show stage in Atlanta. Yetund was crying openly and had accepted 2 tissues from Dare, who was also crying and pretending not to. The Torres family was applauding. Steve Harvey stood in the center of the stage and let it go as long as it needed to go. He did not rush it. He did not move on. He just stayed in the room while something necessary was happening. Lorraine Achafer sent the message, not that day, 3 days later. She had gone home after the taping and sat with her mother and her brother in the kitchen of her parents' house on Willard Drive, which still smelled the way it had always smelled, coffee and her mother's cooking, and something she did not have a word for, something that was simply home. They had eaten dinner. They had talked about Emmanuel, the way families talk about someone when they are not yet ready to use the past tense for everything, when some things are still present tense, because the present tense version is the one that fits best. Blessing had told a story about their first apartment in Atlanta, the one they had rented when they arrived from Lagos, with the window that stuck and the neighbor who played music at all hours and Emmanuel who had learned the neighbor's name and brought him food, and within 6 months had the man playing the music at a reasonable volume because Emmanuel believed that most problems could be solved by knowing someone's name and offering them food. Khaled had laughed. Lorraine had laughed. A real laugh. The kind that surprises you. After dinner, Lorraine had gone to her father's study. She had sat in his chair, she had taken out his phone, she had opened the draft, she had read it one more time, and then she had done something she had not been able to do in 8 months. She had opened a new message. She had typed, "Dad." She had sat with that for a long time. Then she had typed the rest. She had written to him about the show, that she had brought his phone, that she had read the message out loud in front of 200 people, that a man in a suit had told her a bridge was still carrying, and had been so right about it that she had not been able to argue with it. She had written about the tomato garden, about the notebook her mother had been following, about the spreadsheet still on his laptop that nobody had deleted and that she had opened one evening not to do anything with it, just to see his columns and his categories and the specific way he organized information, which was as recognizably him as his handwriting. She had written, "I'm going to be okay. I don't fully know what that means yet, but I think I'm going to get there. I think that's what you were saying in the message, that I have what I need, that you gave me what I needed." Had written, "I believed you, by the way, when you said you were proud of me. I believed you every time you said it. I just needed you to know that I know you meant it." She had written, "I love you. I'm keeping your phone. I hope that's okay." She had not sent it. She had saved it as a draft. The next morning, she had read it back. She had thought about what Steve Harvey had said. She had thought about her father writing send at the end of a message and then not sending it. She had sent it to her father, which nobody had anymore. The message delivered. She did not know where it went. She knew he had written that bridges were like letters. She knew that the person who builds them puts something of themselves in and it stays. She knew her father had spent 28 years building things that lasted. She thought it went somewhere. It crossed. There is a message you have been meaning to send, not a draft you keep refining, not the version you're working toward, the true one. The one where you wrote send at the bottom and then waited for a better moment. The better moment is not coming. The only moment is this one. Send it. Call them, walk into the room and say the thing out loud. Not perfectly, not with the right words, just with the ones you have, which are the only ones available and which are enough. They are always enough. If this story reached something in you, if you have a draft you've been holding, share it with the one person who needs to hear it today. And then go write the message. Subscribe if you haven't. These are the stories worth telling.